all those tasks done around the house, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Unmuted now.
yeah.
Hey, y'all.
Mayor,
Everyone.
Hey, Mayor.
Can you all hear me back here?
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm keeping my distance, and Chairman Mitchell is officiating from my bed.
Yeah, we have but 1 minute so far.
Yeah.
Okay, right now it's 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. So I'd like to call the Spatial Community Development Committee meeting to order. And first, I'm going to ask the mayor, will he give us an invocation, please?
Heavenly Father, I ask you to bless us. Thank you for your many blessings, including those of this Passover and Easter season. And guide us as we make decisions to lead our city during this time of the coronavirus crisis. And please protect those healthcare workers and those first responders, and particularly our city employees who are out giving service, providing service to our citizens, but particularly for our healthcare workers who are truly on the front line of this coronavirus. In your name we pray, amen.
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 Is everyone online? Do we have all the committee members here?
You might want to come to the roll.
For Councilman
Councilmember
Reagan?
Seeking.
Councilman Waring? Is Councilman Waring here yet?
I don't see Councilmember Waring.
Okay. He'll probably be coming in shortly. We are under new business. The first thing we have on is update on the stimulus package, small business loans. And I'm going to ask Megan, would she please come and kind of explain that to us?
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Thompson. I'm with the city's Business and Neighborhood Services Office. A few minutes ago, you should have gotten an email from Jennifer Cook with 3 documents attached to it. I apologize for getting those to you at the last minute, but as you can imagine, trying to provide a current up-to-the-minute situation report right now and get it reviewed by everyone is a challenge. So everything is current as of close of business Friday. And I say that because I've heard the SBA with every webinar say that, everything is subject to change. So this is current as of what we have right now. The first document I don't want to spend too much time on, that is a summary of city actions that have supported small businesses. Most of those are things that you all have passed. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just as a refresher, that is a list of things that the city has done to support businesses during this time. Including the resource list my office has provided, the curbside pickup we're providing to restaurants, the deferral of hospitality taxes, all of those kinds of things are summarized in that document. And then I want to turn your attention to the other 2. So there's one, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen, if y'all will bear with me. No, it does not look like it's going to let me do that from here. Sorry, I'm having to do this on an iPad to have video capabilities. So if you go to the retail report, you'll see that over the past month, our office has been checking in with a series of retail businesses. Now, we didn't have as many people participate as we would have liked because they were having to shift business models and didn't necessarily have the time to chat with us and share data. So we're hoping we'll have more in April. But you can see from that report that they are seeing a significant downturn in business right now and are experiencing layoffs, decreased revenue, things like that. And then the charts that you're seeing are from a data platform called Placer, which uses cell phone data to see how many people are visiting a certain area. Because corporations, when we called them, we called Home Depot, grocery stores, things like that, they didn't feel comfortable sharing that information without permission from corporate. We use this as a supplement to see how foot traffic is going in some of those areas. As you can see, we did it for the King Street Shopping District. There's a very sharp decline there. But other businesses like your home improvement stores have saw kind of a spike in mid-March of visitation. So people are stuck at the house, so they're doing home improvement projects, we figure is what's going on there. And then the last document is the one that we were working primarily on last week. So the SBA started taking applications last Friday for its Paycheck Protection Program. So we identified roughly 20 lenders that we had contact information for in the city of Charleston, first asking if they were participating in the program and what the activity so far has been like. So you'll see in that first big chart, you'll see a list of lenders that are participating in the program. Again, these people are in really high stress situations, just trying to keep up with applications. So the level of detail for the data was not great. We weren't able to get city specific information. Some we got tri-county, some we got state. So please look and see what we've marked there as far as where that data is coming from. Then you'll see a second list of lenders that are not participating. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Some of them are not SBA 7A lenders, so they're not able to participate at this time. And some of them are non-traditional lenders that are trying to come up with their own programs to address the situation. And then lastly, we talked to SCORE and SBDC, who are assistance providers to small business lenders, to see what they're hearing from small businesses who are coming to them for assistance in applying for these programs. In general, what we heard is that people are very frustrated. There's a very high sense of urgency. The banks themselves are frustrated because, again, the regulations and processes keep changing. And there's also a high demand on their time. They said they're working 12 to 15-hour shifts. They've reassigned staff, doing everything they can to get this out the door as quickly as possible. So I'll leave it there and let you guys kind of look and see if you have any questions.
Do anyone have any questions?
Chairman, can I add a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor first, and then we'll come back to Councilman Cypher.
So I would just add to that, if y'all can hear me, that I spoke with Fred Green today. He's the the director of the South Carolina Bankers Association, and they have about 70 member banks in the state of South Carolina, and most of the local banks here in Charleston are members as well. That something like 65 of their 70 members are participating. So he feels like there's good support from the banking community and the banking programs, just addressing that. But he admits, as almost everybody does, that they got off to a rough start. He used the word choppy waters, but because apparently the SBA, even though they were subbing out some responsibility to the local banks, apparently they still had to enter each application through the SBA portal for approval. And their volume over what they normally do was up 350%. But he felt like they had straightened that out, got their capacity increased. In fact, shared that as of 4 o'clock yesterday, nationally, the $205 billion had been approved through the program. Checks hadn't been cut yet for the most part, but that they were now in a position to do that soon. And he's hopeful, as we are, that by the time the rest of the $350 billion is committed, that the next round will be approved by the Congress that they're talking about. So anyway, admitting that they had a rough week, rough 10 days or so, he felt a little more positive for what it's worth to part.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Cypher.
Thank you, Councilman Mitchell, and thank you, Mayor. Meg, and the Mayor, I just want to say, I think we've done a great job as a city to do what we could, the low-hanging fruit around getting information out to our citizens. And Meg, that's great information to share. And I read through it quickly before the call. And when you compile it, you really get a chance to see what we've done. This still leaves the issue of funding for a lot of small businesses. I did get a call from a member of the public, is there a number that they can call to join in and listen on this meeting?
Yes, it is.
It's in the paper. It's in the
It's also being live streamed on YouTube.
Okay, cool. I'll let them know to go there. That's all I had. I just wanted to make sure that it's on YouTube, and I'll let them know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Gregory?
Yes, just to add to what the mayor just said, and I don't know how far along is it, but apparently PayPal is getting into the business, particularly for small businesses that have already an established relationship with them. And they're saying that once they gear up, they'll be able to do these loans in 24 hours.
That would be wonderful if they can do it. Anyone else? Okay, we can move right.
Councilman Chairman.
Councilwoman Jackson?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify what Councilmember Gregory said. I saw Ms. Thompson shaking her head. Yes. So do you know more about what kind of a loan is the PayPal program? Can you tell us what you know about that?
It's basically PayPal has been authorized to do the Paycheck Protection Program. So they as a non-traditional lender, they have gotten permission. They actually have an application process up on their website right now that people can go through to apply for PPP through them.
And also, this is Ruth Jordan. I also went on the PayPal site this morning. The application is very streamlined, very simple. It's only about 1% participation as of today. So I've been emailing people, telling them to go to the PayPal website and get online as soon as possible before it gets bombarded. But it just started today, this afternoon. It went live.
Thank you for the information, Ms. Jordan. Anyone else? Okay, we can move now to item number 2. This is discussion of a proposal to support city's small business community. Before we get started, I would ask Susan to come up and kind of give me some brief information about this.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman, when the agenda was put together initially, it was my understanding that we were going to be talking primarily about the proposal to use the funds from the LDC settlement and also maybe do some brainstorming about some other ideas. It is my understanding, however, that we are no longer going to be pursuing that avenue. And in its place, or maybe as another thought, Councilmember Saccharin this morning distributed a proposal, a different proposal, which hopefully you all received. And while this was not listed on the agenda, we could certainly discuss it if City Council, or excuse me, if this committee is of the mind to do so. We would just need a 2/3 vote to get it on the agenda. And then we certainly can discuss the proposal. No final action could be taken on it unless the City Council also finds that there's an exigent need to do so. So I just wanted to mention that this item could be discussed, but we would just need a 2/3 vote to do so, to add it to the agenda. I also think that at some point, if Ms. Wharton's on the line, she may want to comment on this proposal, or just generally on the state of the city's potential funding or lack thereof for a proposal.
Yes, I would like to have Ms. Wharton to come on next and kind of explain to us if she's online.
I am online.
Yes, okay.
So right now the city has no funding to be able to contribute to this, to the small business. We had a budget that there's no extra funding in for the year. And as it stands right now, with the lack of revenues the city is receiving, there is no extra funding that we could utilize at this point.
All right, thank you very much. So you heard from the city's attorney that we'll need a 3/4 vote to add this to 2/3 votes to add this to the agenda. And what's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilwoman Jackson.
Thank you. I guess maybe it would be good if we could make sure we're all talking about the same proposal. So maybe you could call on Councilmember Saccharin to explain it more thoroughly in the homework that he and I and a few others did this past week to work with the potential lender that's being proposed, just so we have a fair opportunity to hear.
Hey, Councilwoman, Councilman.
Councilman Gregory, I want to make a statement afterwards.
Yeah, I think you're putting the cart before the horse. I think
You
we
have
need to
to.
determine whether or not we are going to discuss it instead of discussing it.
Yes, we have to have the 2/3 votes before we can discuss it. We have to put it on the agenda because it's not on the agenda for discussion. So we have to have a 2/3 votes, and that's coming from the city attorneys. So that's the way we have to do it. Because it was something that came up today that a lot of the council members received today sometime, about probably an hour ago, I guess. And so we have to have this 2/3 votes, and that's what I call to make sure how we can do it.
Okay, well, then I move that we take the vote to put it on the agenda for discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, it was moved in second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Opposes? Okay, it's on the agenda for discussion. So who's going to be the first? Who want to? Councilman Saccharin, then we'll go on.
Thank you, Chairman Mitchell. So to
Point of order. Point of order.
Okay, one second. Yes, Councilman Gregory?
I would like to make sure from our legal department that, while we're not talking about LDC funds, okay, we're talking about potentially other mechanism. If anyone on council will be an applicant for those dollars, I think it's inappropriate for that person to be a part of the discussion. And legal can tell me whether or not I'm correct or wrong. I just want to make sure we're doing everything by the book.
Well, I'm asking our city attorneys to answer that question.
Councilmember Gregory, I would just say at this point that if someone feels they've got an economic interest in this matter, then there would be a potential conflict. However, I'm going to defer to each member to decide that on his or her own before participating in the discussion and the debate. It would be an economic interest that would be different than the broad category of same business owners. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, I don't know the details of everyone's finances or what they would intend to do, but I think this is a decision that each council member needs to make.
Did that answer your question, Councilman Gregory?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. So we move right on. So it's going to be up to the individual council member who's going to be making discussion if there's an ethics violation or not. So Councilman Saccharin, it's on you.
thank you, Chairman Mitchell. Just to start off, I have no interest in receiving any money from this potential loan fund. I do not bank at this bank. I have no financial interests. My wife has no financial interest. My only interest here is to make sure that we can help some of our small business owners. So there's no connection personally or through my business with this proposal at all. Based on just the feedback over the past couple of weeks regarding the proposals that we've had, first we started off with trying to use some money from the city and the LDC fund, and it was, that pot of money caused some angst, which I understood. So we switched gears. I was told by several council members that the thought and the idea was valid. They just had concerns with the pot of money. Since then, that pot of money has been allocated for affordable housing, and that I'm encouraged by that, and that's great. So what that has left us essentially a week ago is thinking about alternative creative ways to spend this money and how it support small businesses. So we've reached out to several partners in the community. One of the partners that came forth is the community-owned Federal Credit Union here in Charleston. I've sent that proposal to everybody several hours ago, and I apologize, but it's taken a couple days to massage some of those details. Essentially, this mimics the Aiken, South Carolina plan, where a local, lending will provide the capital, but it's backed by several organizations. And in Aiken, it's the city. I believe the chamber's involved. This would be a very similar approach to that. There's no effect on our housing fund whatsoever. And quite frankly, I'm not sure even coming through CD committee meeting would be the way this should work. It'd probably have to come through Ways and Means because this is really just a budget decision. You all have the proposal. I laid out the purpose, obviously some statistics that I did want to mention. We are in an extreme crunch in terms of revenues, high anxiety level from small business owners. I can't say that enough. Revenues from the hospitality, municipal and state accommodation taxes are pretty much non-existent. And those two sources make up about 15% of our city budget. So I feel it's in our best interest to stabilize and grow that tax base so they can contribute back to the increased need to recover. I just think it's short-sighted not to invest in our small business owners. So the need is clear. Folks have been operating without revenue since March 16th. And on April 16th, it's going to be a month that small businesses have gone without revenues. Some of them have made arrangements with their landlords not to pay rent. Some have made arrangements with utility companies to offset those costs. But by and large, a lot of small businesses are sole proprietorships, and it's not only affecting the business income, it's affecting their personal income. So if we head into May without any kind of additional funding through the SBA, and we know that has been a rocky start, some of these small business owners are going to find themselves with no money to pay their leases and utilities, and that's going to just cascade down to the landlords. So the investment that we're really trying to seek today with this plan would be to help pay their lease payments, their payroll, utilities, and potentially some lost personal income if they're a sole proprietorship. The partner that we've recognized, and we've had several conversations with them over the past couple of days, is the community-owned federal credit union. They would promote and underwrite these small business loans. They would require a guarantee from the city, and that guarantee would be about $500,000. But we would be able to put out $1.5 million into the community at a pretty quick rate. I realize that that's an investment from the city, and I realize that at this point we do not have that. But I think it's just fair that we at least convey the plan as needed. And if members on this committee feel as though that we cannot move forward, then so be it. I just want to make sure that we're being proactive and we're on record stating as such. Places like Aiken and Columbia, they have done this in this environment. The loan underwriting process would be a quick 2-page application. They would require 2 months of bank statements, 2018 tax returns, and those tax returns would improve the chance for quicker approval. They have committed that they can get money in folks' hands within 2 weeks once they submit an application. This plan would be an unsecured loan of up to $15,000 with a loan term of 36 months, 6 months deferral. They would have to have less than 5 full-time employees on payroll. They would have to reside in the city of Charleston. And the business would have to reside in the city of Charleston. And that is essentially, the plan. There's a couple more details in that document that I had sent out. I just think that, a federal credit union like community owned is an integral part of our city. I feel like they've got their clientele and the way that they've worked in our city, I think would be a great fit for us to move forward with this partnership for those reasons. They've got a long history, and I'm not sure of their relationship with the city in previous partnerships, but they stepped forward, and I do think, to everyone on committee, I do think if the city can stand behind this and at least commit to some, I do think with the crisis that we have and the attention that's being brought, Charleston is being hit the hardest throughout the state. I do think we could find some additional foundation money or other lending institutions that would help offset some of the potential losses. But it's going to require us to go out on a limb and make a commitment. And this is a pared down effort from our $4 million ask. This is $1.5 million at $15,000 loan cap. And that's pretty much the plan.
You finish up, Bill, I want to make, before you go on, Councilman Jackson, I'll make a statement. We just heard from the city attorneys that we don't have any funds at all. So this is the problem that we are running into, even helping small businesses. We as a city, we're in a crunch time right now. We don't know how our budget is going to go right now, and we don't have funds. We don't have funds to set aside to do anything like that right now. And I sympathize with the businesses wholeheartedly. I remember when the credit union first started, I supported them and got them, voted to have them placed there to come into the community. And but the city itself, that's why I had Ms. Walton to come on and let you know that we don't have any money unless you go back to our budget and cut certain things out of the budget that we had approved already. And that's going to be very, very hard to do because the budget was pretty tight when we approved it during that time. So those are some of the things that I was looking at all the time in our budget. And what we are here to do is make sure that we, as council members, really support our community. And our community is the people that live in this community to keep this community striving and going. Because without the community, the business is not going to even be here if the community is not here to be able to support it. So these are the things that I was kind of weighing and looking at and doing things and kind of weighing on the scale which way to go with this. So Councilwoman Jackson, I'll go on next you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reading this document. I think that Councilmember Saccharin and I have probably been too close to it in trying to work out the all the details as quickly as possible with the credit union and their wholly owned subsidiary, the Winchester mortgage lender, who would actually be providing the servicing, the underwriting and the servicing, using their very experienced staff who know the people that are normally the borrowers and the investors in their credit union. So I'm just rereading it and trying to see it with, new eyes as you all have been looking at it today, hopefully. And it occurred to me that we really didn't take the extra couple of sentences to explain that what we're asking of the city, because we had sent the mayor and Mr. Giroux and Ms. Herdina, and I know it was shared with Ms. Wharton, the model that Aiken has begun to offer. They are currently making loans. And what's missing in our paper, I think, that isn't spelled out clearly is the fact that the corpus, the actual money that's going to be lent out up front, will not come from the city. All that's being asked of the city, and yes, it is a commitment, and yes, it is a risk, would be one of the guarantors of the total loan balance if loans were unable to be repaid. And so that we would be guaranteeing the loss of funds to the lenders, the actual investors that the credit union and the mortgage company are actively pursuing, knowing that they will have guarantees provided to them. So we're not putting the money out the door up front. We would be covering on the backside after finding out, within three years that we couldn't actually receive all of the money back and pay the actual lenders off. So I just wanted to make that point. I do think that, that's a key issue. It's not taking money from the city in any short term, because the money that will be lent out are coming from the investor sources that the credit union is responsible to find and sign up for that purpose.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Gregory and then Mr. Mayor afterwards.
In all due respect, Councilwoman Jackson, even if it's a guarantee, you have to have the dollars available. When I did a $400 million loan guarantee with the Medical University of South Carolina to build the Ashley Tower, HUD had to have the $400 million in the bank, just in case it folded. So when we talk about loan guarantee, it's not as though you don't have to have those dollars available. They do have to be available. The other thing that I wanted to discuss, and I think that Councilman Saccharin, I really think that you're very sincere with regard to your effort of helping small businesses, and I think we all are. And I also think that it's interesting that we're dealing with a minority lending institution of which traditionally the city has not made a deposit in that bank yet. And secondly, I think it's also interesting that people who are not a member of the bank, I am a member of the bank, okay, the lending institution, has gone to the lending institution to have some discussion. Again, it might have come out a little differently if we had persons who are members of the bank, persons who have money in that bank, okay, it might have turned out a little differently. And lastly, that while this would eventually be a Ways and Means Committee decision, ultimately, it still rests in the Community Development Committee as it relates to you coming up with a new program. The program, yes, has to be financed, but the program also has to be approved prior to it going to Ways and Means to allocate the dollars. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we're all on the same page. You know, I think that the proposal that you've set forth is very different from the first one, because I thought that the first one would have had a discriminatory impact unintentionally on a specific group. And then lastly, anything that I do has to be data-driven. This is not data-driven. And by that I mean, yes, we can make a general statement with regard to the need of small businesses. And of course, citing the chamber's 70% of most businesses are having a problem. Yes, there's some things that are quite obvious. But again, I think that decisions like this need to be data-driven. How many small businesses that would apply for this, okay, have already fired their people, okay? How many have already closed? We keep kicking the can down the road in terms of how long they can last. 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, we were told that they wouldn't last 2 weeks. Now we're at May 1st. But again, I just think that anything that this council decides on need to be based on data. The data is not here. We have in both proposals, the data is not there. How do we determine out of 1,200 businesses who gets the money? I do know that in the first proposal, you had a $1.5 million cutoff. I don't necessarily see that in this proposal. So again, I just don't know how you're going to do this in such a way that you're not going to be leaving thousands of businesses out that have similar or not the same need.
Does anyone else want to chime in or say anything right now? Councilman Jackson, Sacrum.
I understand the concerns. We talked with Mr. Middleton and Vincent Terry at the bank. We are in a unique situation, and I'm sure the mayor can attest. 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago when we came into this, certainly process and getting things done appropriately is important. But in all due respect, Councilmember Gregory, the data is not there because we are in the midst of the crisis. I don't know how you find data in the midst of a tornado. And sorry for the bad analogy, but that's what we're in right now. That's what business owners are facing. How do we find data about the questions that you need answered? And I'm first to admit that, we should be making data-driven decisions. And I don't think these are emotional decisions. I guess the data that I get is personal conversations I have with small business owners, or my personal attempt to apply for these loans through Wells Fargo and several other lending institutions in the community, and I've had not one response back in a week. So I get that, data is important, but I don't know how do we articulate data and find data in a situation we're in today. And Councilman Gregory, I thought we did our due diligence by speaking to the leaders of the lending institution and the bank. And it was our attempt once again today, to bring everybody on board. And I'm sorry you didn't get it 3 or 4 days ago, but this has been moving target, and we didn't have that information 3 or 4 days ago. So I feel like every time that, we attempt something, we move the goalposts, and the goalposts change. And here we are again. And I get it. If it comes down to a financial decision that the city just doesn't have the money, then we just need to articulate that and say it and then be done with it. But to suggest that
Before we go on, Councilman Gregory, Councilor Pell, you had something to say? Because I thought I saw your hands up. I don't want to bypass.
Not really, but I feel like it's this may be the record for the longest it's gone without me saying something. So I might as well offer my thoughts. I fully recognize and appreciate the comments that have been made by everybody today. I just think that under such extreme circumstances, it's hard for me to believe that there's nothing we can do. I just got to think that we can put our heads together and figure out some way to help on some degree. We're not going to solve all the problems. We don't have the magic wand. Even if it pertains to cutting something that's on the table for future spending to alleviate some funds. I mean, I think that it's a prioritization issue at this point. And, I'm not prepared to give up at this point. I think there's got to be something we can do. If Aiken can do it, if Columbia can do it, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do it in the city of Charleston. I get the thing about the LDC money. We don't need to go back down that road, but I think I made the comment at one of these meetings, let's find the fluffiest of the fluff in our budget and put a crosshair on it and see if we can come to an agreement among council that perhaps diverting that money towards a framework along the lines of what Councilmember Saccharin and the bank have put forward may be something we can look at. So I'd hope we have the opportunity to do that.
Okay, but anyone else? Councilman Waring? Then I'll go back to Councilman Gregory afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I certainly support Councilman Saccharin's efforts. I know his heart's in the right place. But I think it's pretty important to point out that if you were to add up the 12 members of council and the mayor, 11 out of 13 members, 13 voting members, 11 out of 13 voting members either are or have a tremendous amount of experience working with small businesses. In other words, either they are small business people themselves, or they work for a small business. So I think we all are sensitized to the small business needs. And if you say, go around the table, I mean, Ms. Del Chapo, certainly Kevin Shealy, of course, Councilman Saccharin. You come around to Councilman Gregory, myself, Councilman Seeking, Councilman Chied, obviously Councilman Griffin, Councilwoman Jackson, and certainly the mayor has decades of small business experience. So to say that, I mean, we all are sensitized to it. We all, in one part or another, quite frankly, potentially face some of the same issues you, Councilman Saccharin, face with your business. I certainly face it with mine. But the fact is that when you hear the CFO say that we don't have the money to do it, I really don't think the true feeling on that is going to be known by all council members until we have this budget workshop. We have a housing bond that we all are proud to help shepherd passage. Mayor did heavy lifting on that, a $20 million housing bond. I believe we were supposed to go to market with that in March, Councilman Saccharin. So the city of Charleston, with its AAA credit rating, was supposed to go to market for a 20-year borrowing request, in effect, in the private markets. And I believe strongly because our cash flow, we didn't do it. before you can get a bond rating, cash flow plays into part of it. And right now, Councilman Gregory asked for data, and you pointed out very quickly in this situation we don't have the data. Well, we probably didn't have the cash flow to go to the private markets right now and request that $20 million bond. And if you say, well, what do you mean cash flow? When you borrow money from the public, the city has to have the ability to say, this is how we're going to pay that back, okay? This is where in our budget, which would probably be somewhere around $700,000 to $800,000 annually, would be the payback. Of course, our CFO can straighten us out on that, on the exacts. But it'll be someplace in that neighborhood, $700,000 to $800,000 per year for the next 15, 20 years to pay that bond back. Now, we didn't go to the market to do that. Now, when we found out our true cash flow, Councilman Saccharin or Councilman Appel or Councilwoman Del Chapo or whoever else was on this call, are we going to have to be faced with layoffs? Do we even know that yet? So we need to know more about our financial situation before, I think we're going to find, respectfully, and I say this with high respect, Councilman Appel, in other years you would have been right about a little fluff. I'm going to use your term. This year, I don't see how any city can say that they got fluff. Not because nobody on the planet Earth, from an economic standpoint, has been faced with this. Shutting down, in particular, in this country, shutting down a capitalist economy wasn't designed to stop, frankly. So we're all in new territory. And when we come up and guarantee a loan, in effect, basically, we're going to stand as a guarantee. Councilman Gregory, he wasn't 99% right, he was 100% right. We have to have the money in the bank to do that. So then that kind of turns us into somewhat of a lender or a banker. So my question would be that we need to get with our bond attorney to see if we enter those type guarantees. I don't know the answer to this. How would that affect our AAA bond rating? Right now, I don't know that. That certainly has to be a part of the equation because, 2 weeks ago, the mayor talked in terms of, we all supported hiring a financial advisor, hopefully, so maybe in 2021, 22, we can refinance some of our long-term debt to create some more cash flow to help our city work a little bit more efficiently from a financial standpoint. Well, if we don't have a AAA credit bond rating, a lot of that's going to be for naught. So maintaining our cash flow, being able to simply pay our bills on time, that's the hard work we have in the front of us. And I saw where the mayor pushed out a meeting notice already for the, ad hoc committee meeting. So right now, all 13 of us are operating in unknown territory as far as financially what we can do. And believe me, on the front part of this discussion, our CFO came and told us we don't have the money to do it. So we just can't look straight past that. We have to take that to heart. So, some of the sources that Columbia took it from, I could be wrong with this, but I heard that they took it from some of the drainage funds to do that. And I guess, they'll apologize for it and answer for it later. Given the gravity of our drainage situation and the loan loss ratio that we probably experienced on a micro loan like this, drainage money, we just certainly have to, we can't risk them like that. So, wanting to help, I hear that. The reality is the only entity that legally can do a deficit is the federal government. And even the portion that we're complaining about, they run in a deficit to do that. We can't. So, if there's fluff out there's a person on this call right now that can tell us where that fluff is, and that's our CFO. And from the onset, she's told us that the money's not there. So maybe we can get some sort of encouragement from the private sector to help do some things like that. The chamber, I used to chair the chamber. I saw some statistics you quoted, Councilman Sacken from the chamber. Maybe we need to beat some of the bushes out there to see if some companies can come up with some volunteerism from a dollar standpoint to help create a fund like that. But, you know, we get these fact points and we have the discussion that we go right through them as though they don't exist. So the fact point that I hold on to is when the CFO says we don't have the money, I have no reason not to believe her. The second fact point, Mr. Mayor and Council, that I would like to know, if the city were to go into basically the lending business, in particular with unsecured loans, with high loan loss ratios, how does that have an effect on our bond rating, on our credit rating? Because let me tell you, I think there may be one other city, I think Greenville, that had a AAA credit rating. For years, the city of Charleston was the only city with a AAA credit rating in the whole state of South Carolina. And that's a heck of a gift that was passed from Mayor Rowley to all of us as stewards for the city. So, and that's something, once you lose it, boy, I tell you, it's so hard to come. That's like a tax increase on everybody when you lose that AAA credit rating. So, please pay attention to the people that tell us the fact points. And you're right, Councilman Sackman, try to be factual about it, try not to be emotional about it. And I think we eventually make the right decision for all. So we hold on to the facts, maybe we find some solutions in this one. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time that you allotted. But those 2 points, I definitely, one we have the answer to, the second one we can research and find out fairly quickly.
Okay, I'll have Mr. Mayor to do a summary, and then we're going to kind of close this. But I'm gonna have Mr. Mayor come and say something right now.
All right.
Summary.
I can say
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, thank you, Councilmember Sackman, on 2 fronts. One, for acknowledging the good work of Meg Thompson and our business services, that although they haven't been in a position to lend out any money, they really have done a yeoman's effort in connecting the dots, helping people make those connections where they can borrow money, and in you know, doing the things, accommodating the things that we can do, like the curbside relief, like the deferred hospitality taxes, like our enhanced online permitting. So all those non-cash items that we have been very proactively doing as a city to help our business community. And thanks for challenging us, man. I mean, you've been laying the challenge on us to try to do anything that we can do. I must say, from a broad view, from a 30,000-foot view, I view that the best things that we can do to help our business community and our whole city, for that matter, is to keep everyone safe, and to keep, and particularly from the hospitality business point of view, to keep Charleston from becoming a hot spot. Because I believe if our numbers were shooting out the roof on number of coronavirus cases and deaths, that we would get a stigma and people wouldn't want to come back here when things open up. So that may seem like a very underlying kind of broad objective, but I believe our economy will bounce back quicker because we are now collectively taking the steps to keep our city safe. And secondly, on a broad view, providing the basic governmental services that we're all concerned about funding, be it picking up the garbage or providing police and fire protection. Those fundamental city services are just critical to Charleston being resilient and being able to rebound from this coronavirus crisis. So that's kind of a broad view. Thank you for bringing forth another proposal. Yes, a couple other cities in the state have done some involvement with loan programs, including the one from Aiken that you point out. I did, upon Councilmember Jackson's request Friday. I did reach out to Perrin Middleton and spoke to him myself. You know, they are willing to help in any way that they can, and God bless them. And Councilmember Gregory, I do want to share with you that even though the state law is hazy about municipal governments depositing in credit unions, they're not specified under state law, that I have asked Ms. Johnson, Gianna, and she has deposited funds in the CO credit union by our CRC, our Community Redevelopment Committee. So we have finally put some funds in a way through our nonprofit, our members of the CO credit union. I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
They are a great organization and willing to help us. My discussion with Perrin, Councilmembers Jackson and Saccharine, are that they would require 100% of whatever total loan amount be guaranteed. So if you were asking the city to guarantee $500,000, we would have to find others in the community. And we have put out a request to the community, the Coastal Community Foundation, to consider also being a sponsor, if you will, by guaranteeing funds. But we would need to find other folks to also make those kind of guarantees to get to the $1.5 million total loan fund that you're recommending. So it's once again a great idea, but you get down to the bottom line of, even if it's only $500,000, I say only, you hear from Ms. Wharton, you hear everyone's concerns about our own revenue sources being jeopardized, and we need to keep our city services going. So even guaranteeing that $500,000 is basically money that we have not been able to readily identify. And maybe Councilmember Waring is right. Once the workshop occurs and we got a clearer picture, or Councilmember Appel, with all due respect, we keep a very tight budget on basic services. I don't think there's a lot of fluff out there, but it's certainly the will of council if there was something out there that y'all wanted to reallocate in our budget. But we'd have to be thoughtful and think about our shrinking revenue sources, and then prioritize this over something else. So I'm sorry if I rambled on, but I just wanted to share my thoughts and a little feedback on the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, if anyone else, is Amy's,
Sorry, Councilman
Councilman Saccharine?
one last piece. Mayor, thank you for everything you've done. I know that's been a challenge. You and I have talked privately, and I'll say it publicly. I think the city of Charleston has led, not just the state, but the Southeast in terms of what we're doing around medical and health and safety precautions. So I think you've been a leader in that regard. I just have to push back a little bit and say, we are the best city in the Southeast. If we do this, people will follow and lead with us. Why can't we do this? If we do this, people will follow our lead. And then I'm just going to ask again, maybe we minimize the amount and we do a match with a foundation or with some other business leaders in the area. But people are waiting on us to take the first step. And if we don't take the first step, then, I understand that we have a budget crisis. I get that. But can we minimize the amount that we're in and just work our relationships as being the best city in the Southeast to make sure we get some matching funds to help us? I got my last request.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Saccharine, I understand what you're saying altogether, but I think none of you all here wasn't here when we did the budget. You don't even see how the budget, how we cut a whole lot of things out of the budget, even to make the budget so we can approve the budget so the budget can pass. The money is really not there for us to even go and say, we will stand for this or stand for that. It's not there. If our city goes bankrupt, then what's going to happen then? The business don't mean, really don't even need the businesses then. We have to make sure our economy, our housing, our community is a strong, vibrant community. That's going to make sure that anything in this city is going to operate. Before businesses came, the community carried the city all the time. And I'm telling you wholeheartedly because I've been here. So this is what we have to do. Make sure that our community is a strong, vibrant community. If businesses come, fine, because the people who are here are going to patronize those businesses. And that's how the business is going to make it with the people that's here. So that's all I'm saying. But you can't pull money out of a barrel that's not there. So we got to understand that if the money is not there, even in your home, you can't get money out of someplace out of your home that you're working for, you have, and buy something else when you don't have the money yourself. And this is what it is. We got to do financial and budgeting. And that's what I should do myself, financial and budgeting. And that's what it's come down to. But if you see that chief financial officer say we don't have it, we can't even back this program when we don't have the money to back it. That's the problem we're running into. Not saying we don't want to do it, but if the money is not there, where are we going to get it from? If we have other businesses out there that you can get it from, that they might come forth and say, okay, we'll help with this because we see that the limit with these small businesses, fine. But the city itself, we can't depend everything just right on the city itself. See, that's all I'm saying. I'm not knocking, because I said what you're doing is fine. I got people in businesses. I got family in businesses that closed up too. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm telling you, this is what's happening right now. But I don't think we need a motion on this. I think there's a motion there, but I don't think we have.
Council, Mr. Chairman,
discuss it. Let's just discuss it. The motion is
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman
Gregory. I mean, in all due respect to Councilman Saccharin, over the last 2 or 3 discussions on this, I take issue with a lot of what you have said. And at some point, I'd like to sit down and really have a chat with you about some of those things. Secondly, this cannot be feeling driven. This has to be data driven. And I think we all got some data today from our chief financial officer that I think that we should take heed. I am not accustomed to going into anything flying blindly. And as a past manager, none of my staff came in and told me anything about how they felt. I needed the data to support their position, and the data is still not here for me. And as a result, under no circumstances can I support anything where our city would be flying blindly.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Jackson, and I think everyone else already had something to say. I think we'll close after this, I guess. Councilwoman Jackson.
Thank you, sir. I guess I really appreciate that we got 3 very thorough reports from the Business Services Office today, and they took the time to make it as timely in terms of closing out the information that they have been collecting on Friday. So I think we do have the beginnings of data categories that pretty much all add up to the same theme, that the businesses are hurting. That's not an emotional topic. That's a financial topic. When you say a business is hurting, that means that they can't see how they're going to be able to continue on. And I really do feel like Councilmember Saccharin deserves the kind of encouragement that we would all have to give him, wanting to solve a problem. And it is, yes, our community, but the business owners are also part of our community. We're talking about the small businesses that are still on the corners, thank heaven, the marketplace vendors, the minority and business, that women in business that Ms. Jordan goes the extra mile to serve, and our business, neighborhood and business services the same. We're not talking about, McDonald's coming in here for a franchise. We're talking about the places. I've been staying in touch with two restaurants that are out here on James Island, and just as a learning curve for myself. The one closed up because they are a family-owned business, and they just decided they were going to hunker down and eat their own food and not serve their customers. And that was a personal choice they made. But they're not sure they can open up again if they don't get some sort of break on their rent. And the other operation has gone into the carryout business, and they're limping along with a husband and wife and 2 other employees, hoping and praying that their people are going to be able to come back. They've applied for every loan out there. They had to apply twice for the disaster loan from the SBA because the SBA changed the format of the loan. So they were like in the first wave of making those applications right after the 17th of March. And then they were told that if they didn't come back and reapply using the current form, that their original application was not going to be processed. You just can't imagine, you know, the cluelessness of people who are trying to do their best to keep their business going. So and honestly, I'm very, you know, I know that there's so many things coming in on the mayor's office plate, but we sent this Aiken model early last week, and we were given encouragement that it was the right way to go, the right way to be thinking about how to spread out the city's risk, not have to put any money up front, and then guarantee losses that would occur on the back end. And I'm not questioning the fact that, you know, Ms. Wharton has scrubbed her budget and says we don't have any other money to move around in the 2020 budget that we're currently in. But we're not talking about seeing these losses in 2020. And I know you're supposed to book the opportunity to have, you know, that money available when the losses come through. But I think it would be very interesting for all of us to hear from our CPA, our auditor, on how you actually have to account for losses expected that are going to be guaranteed in a future budget year. That would be a learning curve that we could all gain from. I would like us to think about how to come out of this meeting taking a vote that would not guarantee the city put forward even the losses guarantee, but to support the idea of having a loan fund that we could make available to the most vulnerable businesses in our community, the minority, the women businesses, and the vendors that we all know Charleston epitomizes for the people who come here and spend money. And that's the key. We've been talking and getting information from the Low Country Local First, Councilmember Gregory. They don't have enough hours in the day to make fancy charts, but they are keeping a list of everybody that they've talked to. They try to survey a variety of business operations. So it's not just the food and bev, which we all know is pretty much decimated right now. So why can't we, as a community development committee that's not being asked to spend any money that we actually are in charge of for the housing and the community development budget, why can't we come out of this meeting saying that we would put forward the request to the full council to amend the full council agenda tomorrow night and have this discussion at Ways and Means and really make it worthwhile, because we have a framework of what we all say we want to do programmatically. We just need to find the money. But if we have the vote by a full council that we want to accomplish this, then I think it is priming the pump. We would be able to go to the chamber. We would be able to go to the Regional Development Authority. We would be able to go to the SC, who are business, state commerce department, and say, we want to run a program. We've got the framework. We've got it all set up. All we need is some guarantors to join in with us. So that's my request of you, Council Member Mitchell, Chairman of our committee, that if we don't have to take a formal vote on this, that we put forward a statement by you at the council meeting that we could make this, amend the agenda and ask to have this on our agenda as a council participation, whatever we call that, the council resolution section of our agenda, where we're allowed to put things up for council discussion.
Councilman Waring, I hear you.
You know, Mr. Chairman, we talk about these losses. Ms. Jackson, with all due respect, you talk about these losses being transferred. What we're talking about is transferring losses from business to city government. That's what you're really talking about. And none of us, I haven't heard where the money's going to come from to pay for these losses. Now, when you have losses in city government, it's called a deficit. Let's call it what it is. You're talking about transferring losses from businesses to city government to create a deficit. And you talk about going to the chamber. I'm very, very familiar with the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. You will find more conservative people in the chamber than you would liberal people in the chamber. I've had the privilege to sit to the head of that board table and on the executive table. I got almost 15 years of being involved with this same chamber in this city, right? It's the oldest chamber, continuously operating chamber in the entire United States, okay? You will find many members of that very chamber, as some of you all have referred to, that will tell us city government shouldn't be involved with stimulus packages. Some of those same people that we refer to will tell us we shouldn't take taxpayers' dollars to fund private businesses this way. In particular, when we don't even know where we're going to get it from to cover these quote-unquote losses. I mean, we venturing into a territory right now that that's a bridge too far. So, you know, to have this conversation at council, I thought our legal counsel told us we can have the discussion today, but we couldn't actually have a vote on it because it wasn't on the agenda. We put it on the agenda for discussion. But when we find out where the money's going to come from, and I don't see how we're going to get to that point, respectfully, Council Lady Jackson or Councilman Saccharin, until we have our workshop to find out. The mayor's already said that. We have this workshop to find out where it is. This is no evasive tactic. Right now, I think in some of the information you sent, Councilman Saccharin, it pointed out about 15% of the city's budget is affected by these various accommodation and hospitality taxes. And you're right about that. You're right about that. So now, let's just say hospitality, if memory serves me right, hospitality taxes was estimated somewhere around $17 million out of a $220 or so million budget. So what percent are we down? Are we down 10%, 20%, 30%? Well, let's just say we're down 50%. That's $8.5 million that somehow we got to find someplace else. And when we talk about cutting expenses, how many police officers you want to cut? How many firemen you want to cut? How many people in the business services office you want to cut? Because those are hard choices. If we're going to cut monies to fund this from the general fund, and that's what we're talking about, from the general fund, those are the type choices that the 13 people will have to make. And when you talk about voting on something that, my goodness, we got to keep the city open. If business is to snap back, it is not going to snap back with a government that's closed. So when you have a catastrophic event like we're having in this country right now, that's why you have a federal government. I agree. The rollout has been slow by self-admission, but I don't think anybody can say it's not getting better. Evidence on this same call. Our minority business person pointed to PayPal. I'm glad I was on this call. I didn't even know about that part. So, and whether we want to admit this or not, the resiliency of small business is the strength of American business. More jobs are created by small business than any other form of business in America. So a month ago or 3 weeks ago, when we were told if these businesses don't get money in 2 weeks, they're going to die. They're not going to be around. I venture to say that most of those businesses are, in fact, still around. Now, they're hurting. I agree with that. They're hurting. But you know what? Their resiliency was longer than 2 weeks. We were told when we were in the last community development meeting, if they don't get this is just some of the comments. If you don't get the money in 5 days, they're going to close down. I venture to say that those businesses have not closed down. in those 5 days that was recanted. So the emotional part about it, we really do have to dispense with. As I said, we've got 86% of city council and the mayor that are small business people. So all of us, if there's a lobby for small business people, it is the city, the composition of city council and the mayor. So it is not Councilman Saccharin, it's just not Councilman Jackson that's concerned about this. Obviously, you all have had more of a platform on this. I am in search of an answer as well, but some of the areas you are pointing to, and I would caution, these losses that we just kind of bantering about, the losses that you all talking about potentially having, if we were to have, again, an unbalanced budget, it would hurt the taxpayers and this city for decades to come, not just 1 or 2 years. It would hurt us for decades. So we've got some hard choices to make. And I look forward to pushing in that whole direction with every one of y'all to make these choices. But number one, we have to keep our people on board so the city can keep operating. So when businesses ramp up, they expect those policemen to be there. They expect those firemen to be there. They expect the sanitation people to pick up the trash. But if government doesn't pay for it, how's it going to happen? Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Susan Herdina has her hand up, and also
Oh, I can see
just
it.
as a
Okay.
reminder, we have to
Yes, Susan.
start real estate at 30.
All righty. Yes, so we can, we'll have to ask because it was a good discussion, and I think we need to keep looking and seeing if we can probably work out something to find some solution. But right now, I don't see it right now. I don't see a solution yet. So all we can do is keep looking, and I know Councilman Saccharin and Councilwoman Jackson will keep looking. And we just got to keep looking around and see what we can come up with. But right now, the way the city is strapped, I don't see how the city can do it right now. I just don't see it. Maybe something might come up, if we wake up tomorrow morning, something else might change, but I don't see it yet. So if we don't have anything else to bring before the committee, I think I can make a motion that we close.
Councilmember?
Yes.
Councilmember
Susan?
Mitchell?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify a point that Councilmember Waring brought up. This matter having been added to the agenda by a 2/3 vote
Correct.
could be, in order to be approved, would require a 2/3 vote and a specific finding of a exigent circumstance. So I just wanted to clarify that point because I think at one point Councilmember Waring said it could not be voted on.
I did. You're right. I stand corrected, Ms. Herdina.
Thank you.
So we have to carry this motion through.
Yes, sir. I think you do need there is a.
There's this is Jennifer. There is no motion on the floor. There is a motion and a second that was voted on to add it to the agenda, and that was voted on.
Just to add to the agenda. So if we wanted to go on the city council, we have to have another motion.
If you wanted,
Yes.
you may want somebody to make a motion either to approve it or to add it to the city council agenda as a discussion point for tomorrow.
All righty. Someone have to make the motion. Nobody making the motion.
If somebody wants to add to the agenda tomorrow night, they can make a motion tomorrow night as well, so.
Well, if you want to make the motion tomorrow night to add to the agenda.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, well, we're gonna adjourn and someone can do it tomorrow at our city council meeting. Tomorrow, they can make a motion to add to the city council tomorrow.
Second the mayor's motion to adjourn.
Okay, second? Okay, with second, we adjourn, because we have another meeting coming up. Thank you.